I don't even know where to start with this video, but I just feel like I needed to talk. I'm just out the shower. I've had to have a shower because my heart's just doing funny things again, and I feel like I need to be prepared in case I need to end up back at the hospital, which brings me on to this topic. So a couple of weeks ago, I had an appointment with my consultant because at the end of last year I was struggling with my breathing and felt like something was going on with my lungs. So managed to get in, see a consultant. It wasn't my usual. So I seen one of his colleagues who had said, right, we'll get you your breathing tests, which I did. Got them in early January. And they had kind of seen that there had been a dip there. Had got my scan, CT scan, which later found at this appointment that, so this latest appointment, I seen my consultant that I used to see all the time. He's great, he's fantastic. Really feel like, he's on the ball, absolutely feeling safe hands with him. So I've seen him again, hadn't seen him for a few years, over a year anyway. And he was saying, like I'd spoken to a consultant, I'd spoken to someone recently, the day before, who had said, the CT scan doesn't show a huge change with the pulmonary fibrosis, the scarring in your lungs. Someone else who had looked at it said there had been a big change, but this person that I'd spoke to the day before, who had sat down with the scans, had said there isn't a huge change, so we really need to make sure that something else isn't going on. So he said he wanted to, arrange like a heart scan and a CT scan of the lungs with contrast this time. But he said that the heart scan and stuff could take like 9-10 months. So anyway, while we were there, I had been explaining to him, look, my oxygen levels are dropping, like really dropping at home a lot and really quite fast with little effort, little movement. So he had me just walk up like a little corridor twice. And so before I walked up the corridor, my oxygen levels were 95. And just after walking up and down twice, they were 85. And he was like, nope. He brought me back into his office and started making calls there and then. And he got me admitted to like the rapid access ward for the day, so that I could then get the lung scan with the contrast that day, which we did. So the goal was that he wanted to check to make sure there was no blood clot in the lung, so that he could then kind of push for me to get the rituximab again, which is like the chemo that I used to get. So I say it's like chemo because it's chemo, but it's like it's not as strong a dose as you would get chemo. But it's like a 6-hour infusion. You get it a week, and then 2 weeks later you get it, and then you get it like normally 6 months later, and the same again, which really helped before to control my lungs. So he was explaining at that appointment that, sometimes unfortunately with dermatomyositis, that your lungs can just take a hit again. You can be going steady and then your lungs can just take a hit and things just go in decline, and you just got to try and get control back of the lungs again. But it probably does coincide with me reducing my steroids last year, because I had managed to get down to like 3 milligrams. At one point I'd gone to 2.5, but that's when I noticed that I was starting to feel like some kind of inflammation and stuff in my lungs. So I went back to 3, but that's probably when everything just went wrong. So that day I had the CT scan with contrast, and my consultant came up to the ward afterwards and said, okay, I've got your results. And he was like, good news is there is no blood clot. And then he started drawing the curtains round, and I was like, oh. He was like, but it shows signs of like pressure in the vessels from your lungs to your heart. Long story short, it looks like pulmonary hypertension. I had done some reading and knew that pulmonary hypertension is not great. So my heart sank. So there was talk of, so what's going to happen is he's already emailed the Golden Jubilee, which is the centre in Glasgow that would deal with this. It's the specialist centre. He says what will happen is once we've kind of consulted with them, they would be looking to get you in there, have you admitted for a week to run lots and lots of tests. But we need to get you a heart scan to confirm the pulmonary hypertension. So he then sped that up. So that, it kind of left me with that news. He phones me before he'd even left the hospital again to say, right, here's what's happening. Like, if anything happens, this is what you must do. You need to go A&E. If this and that happens. I've left them a big letter. And so it was all very terrifying. It was a lot to get my head round. And it was very worrying. So I went home that weekend. My head was bursting with just this pulmonary hypertension thing. The thought of going into Glasgow, which isn't my local hospital, for a week as well, to do all these tests. And then when I looked at the tests, they were quite scary. So my head was bursting with all that stuff. But then so then he also, at that appointment, upped my steroids back to 30 milligrams, which is like, when you spent years getting down your steroids to a small dose, it's so destroying. But obviously my lungs, my oxygen levels were terrible. I was barely functioning in the house. I could hardly do anything. My lungs were so bad. So I was getting my head round that I was having to go back up to 30 milligrams of steroids. On top of that, he was also sending me in the following week for an infusion of methylprednisolone of 1,000 milligrams, so a gram. So lots of steroids to try and get control back in my lungs, so they didn't get any worse. In the meantime, while we waited to see what the next course of action would be, whether it was going to be rituximab or whether we have to wait and see what's happening with this pulmonary hypertension, because obviously that would be a different matter, because we can't just go ahead and treat with rituximab, because that would interfere with the tests that they would have to be doing at Golden Jubilee. So lots to think about. There was lots and lots to think about. But in the meantime, my pulse started dropping. So it was going into bradycardia. It started dropping to like 50, and I was like, what's this? This isn't right. So that started scaring me, and I mentioned it to him because he phoned to check in on me. So I mentioned that to him, and he was like, no, that's not good. If that happens, you really need to be going into hospital. You need to go to emergency. You need to be seen. You need to have this checked. So it did keep happening. So this is when all the drama started. So I can't even remember the first night. One night, so I was chatting to my friend, and I'd said to her, I'd outright asked her, look, would you be up for a trip to A&E? And she was like, of course, absolutely, I'll come over. I was like, there's no mad rush right now. So just whenever you're finished work and blah, blah, blah. So she did, she came over. We went up there. I told them, look, my heart rate keeps dropping. My consultant said I really need to get this seen if it keeps happening. At this point, they were like, I think when we first went up, they were like, there's an 8-hour wait. It went up to 10 hours, and it went up to, so it was up to 10 hours. We got seen fairly quickly, obviously heart things as well. So we got triaged quickly. I got a heart trace, and then back in the waiting room, and then back through for bloods, back in the waiting room. And I think we'd been there about 6 hours, and someone came through and shouted to the whole of the A&E department, right, this is going to be a 12-hour wait before you get to see a doctor. There's been emergencies, and you know, it's going to be so long before you get to see a doctor. I can't tell you what to do, whether you need to stay or leave. So I was sitting there like, aware that my friends got work in the morning. At this point, it was like midnight or something. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to sit there for 12 hours for them to tell me, oh yeah, everything was fine. Your bloods were normal. Your heart trace was normal. Because at this point, I'm thinking, well, if there was anything up with the heart trace, surely they would have said, right, you can't be sitting out in the waiting room. So I really struggled with that. So I was like, I don't know what to do. So my friend went up and spoke to the receptionist. She actually went up and spoke to the triage nurses as well, who had said, look, if she's got an appointment on Wednesday to go and get this steroid infusion, they'll be able to tell her. I think it was the next day maybe, I don't know. They'll be able to tell her results there. which I was a bit like, I'm not sure they will. And they couldn't. So we decided to leave. And they couldn't tell me. I went for my infusion and they were like, no, we can't tell you that. She was like, we can't tell you that. We can't access these results. We can't access that part of the system. So I was like, okay, but I figured no one's contacted me. The GP hasn't rung. Like, nobody's contacted me to say there's been an issue. So anyway, I got a call to say that a heart scan had been arranged for the Friday. So I was like, that's good. It's went quick. It's managed to get that in. So I went to that appointment, and while I was sitting in the waiting room, I see my consultant walk by and he popped his head in and waved. So when I went to get the heart scan, the technician there says, your consultant's just been up to see me to say that he is delighted that you presented at A&E. He's glad that you took his advice, but you should have stayed because they could have treated you. So then I'm thinking, well, did they find something? So I had no idea about that. So she did the heart scan. She didn't tell me nothing. But my consultant rang when I got home. And he said, so this is Friday afternoon, and he said, okay, so the heart scan didn't confirm pulmonary hypertension, which is very surprising. So he's thinking, I don't know if that's just been pressure from your lungs. So he doesn't now know if the Golden Jubilee will even assess me. So he's sent all that off to the Golden Jubilee and he just has to wait and see. But he did say about the pulse and stuff, and he says the next thing we must do, because he also said that my heart trace that got done at A&E showed significant damage. So when I was first diagnosed with dermatomyositis, so bearing in mind myositis is a muscle wasting disease, the heart is a muscle. When I was first diagnosed with myositis, my heart traces were abnormal and I had damage to the heart. Now after rituximab, I think it kind of, evened it out, everything was under control. But he's now saying that the heart traces that were done in A&E are significantly worse than the ones that I had years ago. So he said, something is really going on with your heart and we really need to get you a heart MRI. So that on top of whatever's going on with these pulse drops all the time, the bradycardia, something's going on that needs to be looked at. So the next step is we need to get you a heart MRI and we need to get you a 24-hour heart monitor to try and capture these pulse drops. So I said to him, the pulse drop is really giving me such anxiety. And he said, look, I really share your concern. And again, if it happens, you need to go in. Which just gave me so much anxiety. I mean, the anxiety was just off the chain. So Friday night, it's dropping again. And my anxiety, I couldn't even keep a lid on it. So normally with all these conditions that I've been having, the dermatomyositis, the arthritis, like everything, I've pretty much, I've processed, I deal with it, I can put a positive spin on it, I can just get my head around it. But with this heart stuff, I can't. I've just had such mad panic that I'm going to drop dead like any second. I feel so good thinking about it again. Like, the panic has been absolutely crazy. I go to bed at night thinking, am I even going to wake up in the morning? It's been absolutely terrifying. And, it's always been a fear of mine. I don't know my real dad. I don't know my dad, but I do know that he had significant heart issues and major heart surgery before he was 50. I'm 48 and I've always had this fear that I'm not going to make it by 50 and it's going to be my heart that does it. So this is very, very real for me right now. I don't have a partner, so if anything happens to me while I'm in my bed at night, nobody's going to know. I live with my youngest son, but try to wake him up. But he's been my rock. He's been so level-headed. We've had conversations, we've said what we've had to say to each other, because we both know, this could go left at any minute. So we've had those conversations, we've got things in place should anything happen. He knows who to tell, like even down to like the support I get on Instagram, like the support I get from people on Instagram. Like I've even said to him, like, oh, even log into my Instagram. Like you won't even need to log in; it'll be on my phone. Like even just put a post up on my behalf, just thanking everyone, just let everyone know, like just how much, like I value how much they've meant their support, but I've also told them to send one privately to someone who I just feels like my wee kindred spirit, like Heather. So if you see this video, Heather, but yeah, it's just crazy the things that I've been thinking about, and it's just been so terrifying. So the panic got so bad on the Friday night, and then I started having chest pains. I mean, probably from the anxiety. So my friend, I was lying in my bed. I'd taken all my meds and stuff, but I was lying in my bed and I just couldn't cope with the panic. And my friend messaged me, and I showed her, like, because I'm wearing my smartwatch which traces my pulse and everything, and I showed her the data from it to be like, look what's happening with my pulse. And she was like, is it panicking yet? And I was like, yep. And she was like, do you want to go in? I was like, yes, I do. So she came over, which it was already late. She was in her jammies. She came over, and instead of going straight in this time, we rang NHS 24, and they actually got an ambulance out, which I felt really bad about, but because we weren't expecting that. The purpose of phoning was, she was thinking maybe rather than have you go sit in A&E, they'll send you to the acute ward. But that didn't happen. They said because it was chest pain, because it was heart related, they would have to get the Scottish Ambulance Service out. So they sent like the first responder. But what always happens when I get anxious, the pulse goes up anyway. So the pulse rate never shows the minute I get to the hospital. So they had said because everything was fine, like they didn't have like the equipment to do any ECG. The heart trace, is that the right one? Anyway, but they had to phone and say if they were going to have the ambulance was going to take ages. We were like, listen, we are fine to go in ourselves. We don't need an ambulance to come out here. We can see I'm not in any immediate danger. Like we can drive up to the hospital and wait. So they cleared it for us to do that, and then that's what we did. And this time it was a 14-hour wait. So I think it was about 10:30. So we sat there throughout the whole night. This time I was like, I'm not leaving. I need to speak to somebody. I need to speak to somebody to at least put my mind at ease somehow. I need to know that I'm not going to like die like immediately. So about 10:30 the following morning, after the usual, you know, I got the ECG, I got the bloods and that, and then 10:30 the next morning, they said, right, we're going to get you down to the acute ward. So a porter took me down there, and they gave me tea and a sandwich, which was much needed. And the person I spoke to, she was lovely, and she was just explaining, like, it's good that you're having these warnings, because some people it's like they'd be passing out and stuff, but at least you're getting these warnings without the passing out, like you're getting the drops. It's allowing us to then do monitor. She says, but you are such a complicated case that this needs meetings. This needs a cardiologist, it needs your consultant, it needs everyone to be here to decide what's the best thing, what needs to be done. So they wanted to admit me, but because they had the 24-hour heart monitors there, they said they fitted that and said I could go home. But she said, listen, say the word if you want to be admitted, I will admit you. If you're too anxious to go home. Had it been the following night, the night previous, I would have said, yep, admit me. But I'd been there the whole time, and that's why she said, look, if I admit you, you're going to be sitting again, waiting on a bed. So I can put the monitor on you. You can get home, and you can drop the monitor back. And I was like, yep, I need to come back for the cat. I had been sat up all night. I mean, I'm diabetic, and I wanted to wash. Well, couldn't really have a proper shower anyway because of the monitor, but I definitely just wanted to get back now that she'd kind of eased, and she'd kind of gave me the rule, you know, if it goes under 50 for like 10-15 minutes, come in, any kind of chest pain, 999. If it goes under 30 at all, 999. So that kind of gave me a wee bit of, like, it eased the anxiety a bit. So then I took the monitor up the following day, and they were like, right, we've got a note here, we have to take it straight up to cardiology. So I was thinking, that's great. That was Monday. And then I didn't hear anything. I still haven't heard anything. And this is now Sunday. So I'm glad it's Monday tomorrow, because I feel better when the weekend's over, because then I feel like everything's up and running again. People are at the hospital that I know. But I was hoping they'd contact me with an update. But I have the feeling that my consultant wasn't there last week. And I think they're probably trying to wait and see what is happening next before they get in touch with me. But I kind of need some kind of update. Because when I first found out that I was supposed to go to Golden Jubilee, I was like, oh no, I don't want to go. But now I'm like, please let me in. Just do all the heart tests. Tell me exactly, because those are the experts there. Tell me exactly what's happening with my heart and what needs to be done and how bad it is and what's what. So it's now Sunday, and I've been keeping myself busy because of the steroids. I've been getting jobs done around the house that I haven't been able to do for such a long time, just with all the fatigue and stuff. So it's nice having a bit of energy with the steroids. But I was sitting today and I noticed that my pulse just been doing weird stuff. So it's, you know, it's been like all over the place. Been sitting at like 89, 90, then it's dropped to 51, and then it's been back up at 70, then dropped to like 41. And I'm just like, oh, so it gave me anxiety. So I thought, nah, I'm just going to go and get a shower, get into fresh jammies, so that if anything happens later, I'm good to go. But I think if anything happens later and I'm good to go, it'll be a case of I'll just be phoning myself. Like if it's a emergency, I'll just be phoning them myself and not involving anyone else this time. And just like if it's an actual emergency, I would just phone them. Phone NHS myself or phone an ambulance and just get taken in and not have anybody sitting around waiting all that time. Because, oh, it's mental. But it's, yep. This is, I think, the most scared I've ever been in my life. And I just can't wait for some answers. So that's what's happening with my health right now. The joys. I'm going to try and watch some telly and try not look at the data from this watch obsessively, because it's not helping. So I hope whatever you do today, you get to spend your spoons on something fun.